Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. What I wanted to talk about tonight was a reaction of on the Instagram profile of one of a professor whose material I've been digging for several weeks now. Her name is Babada Carini. She goes by the tag, I think it's intelectual diferente, which means a different intellectual. You can find her on her Instagram page here. That's what it says, uma intelectual diferente, Babada Carini. She's a professor at the Federal University of Bahia. So these are just some of the videos that she has posted. So the one I'm going to talk about today is here, where she says, what if Zé Pequeno was a white man? Now, Zé Pequeno, for those of you who know or don't know, that is the Portuguese version of the 2002 hit film City of God, which was released in Portuguese as Cidade de Deus. Now, I had talked about the importance of Black Panther in Brazil. It was released as Pantera Negra. And this was a huge film. When I saw Black Panther in Sao Paulo, I forget what year, was it 2020, maybe 2019? Don't remember. But Brazilians all over the country, Afro-Brazilians, were organizing Black-only cinema. So, movie theaters, people, they would rent out the entire theater, and 200, 300, 400 Black people would fill up those movie theaters to watch Black Panther. It was an enormous event. It was, Black Panther was a huge hit all over the world. But, Black Brazilians who I've said for years have been starving for, positive images of themselves leading roles. If they can't get it through the Brazilian media, then they turn to African Americans, the depictions of African Americans and Black characters in the United States. So, as I've said this before, as I did a video like a week or two ago, just talking about a guy's reaction to a particular scene from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which in Brazil is known as maluco no pedaço, like a crazy man in the piece. Okay. So this is something for, Americans, particularly Black Americans, to remember that, media productions coming out of the United States are often, it's not just, obviously it's American production, but these productions have a huge influence all over the world. So, the Black Panther film, as I just said, it was huge, So I had already talked about the Black Panther, the success of the film in Brazil in several previous articles from a few years ago. And I had actually already talked about the idea that there were facets of Brazil that had an influence on the Black Panther film. Now, what is it that you see there, or what was it there? So this is an article from 2018. What does Brazil have to do with Marvel's Black Panther film? An actress, a waterfall martial arts, and one of Brazilian cinema's most popular films. So this is something that Michael B. Jordan talked about. Let me see if I can find the piece where he's talking about this. Let me go down. So 2000 film Cidade de Deus, City of God, also had an influence on the making of Black Panther. So let's see, let me see what he had to say. Actor Michael B. Jordan reveals inspiration of the film Cidade de Deus in preparation for Black Panther. Speaking of the 2002 film released in the U.S. as City of God, Jordan told the O Globo newspaper, obviously O Globo is the top media outlet in Brazil, and he did an interview, and he said, when we did Fruitvale Station, we saw the movie several times, and we thought about how we, the fruits of the ghetto, could understand, even without sound, the characters of Rio de Janeiro. I did research for my character watching the Fernando Meirelles in Cacha Lungi movie. These are the directors of City of God, and it became one of my favorites in life. When Ryan said he wanted, Ryan being the director of Black Panther, he said that he wanted City of God boys to see each other on the screen in Black Panther. He summed up in a very raw he he summed up in a very raw way of our chat. So Jordan was just talking about the influence of City of God in the Black Panther film. So this is what I wanted to discuss a little bit today because recently Babada Kanini, she did a reaction video on her YouTube channel. So I wanted to discuss this a little bit. So I'm going to share what she said in her recent video talking about the influence of the in Portuguese, the Portuguese edition, it was the character was known as Zé Pequeno. By the time it was released in English as City of God, they had changed the name, well, a literal translation really, because they called him Lil Zé in the American version. So let's get into what Professor Carini was talking about here. Okay. So the title of her video was, "What if Little Dice or Zé Pequeno were a white man?" So I'm going to overdub what she had to say in her video. The other day, I saw this article about how Michael B. Jordan, in order to play Killmonger, the villain in Black Panther 1, was inspired by Zé Pequeno, a character played by the great Brazilian actor Leandro Firmino. I felt very represented. I was very happy with this news, but at the same time, I was reflective because I remembered a live talk I watched of Leandro Firmino together with his partner Leticia, who gave very hard and at the same time very true information about the lives of Black Brazilian actors and actresses. My husband is a Black male actor, and for sure, because of the work he's done, if he were a white man, he'd have a lot more work and we'd have a different standard of life. I wouldn't, for example, have to work 40 hours like my mother. The same work, and it would be different conditions or different everything, right? And that affects my mental health, our mental health. Well, the fact is that Leandro Firmino carried the movie City of God on his back with the character Zé Pequeno. He internationalized the film. It made the movie a huge worldwide success. And the fact is that no white actor who did such a feat wouldn't have their life completely transformed the next day. A white actor who did exactly what Leandro Firmino did, his wife certainly wouldn't have to work 40 hours a week to help support the family years later. This happens because of something called the narcissistic pact of whiteness, which explains a lot about why whiteness is able to maintain itself in this niche of television and film opportunities. And this also happens because of something called white privilege, because many white actors and actresses who have never even had such iconic roles, such strong roles, are national successes, highly recognized. And we don't directly understand why there was such a big trigger, right? From a great trigger as what should have happened with this great actor who is now performing in the series Impuros. Watch it, won't you? Isn't it wonderful? The fact is that what Leticia brings up is very important and reflects the pervasiveness of structural racism in all social complexes, including the arts complex. Okay, so you heard what Babada Carini had to say about this topic. I want to go back and touch upon something that she called the pact of whiteness, o pacto da branquitude, a phrase coined by the professor, the psychologist, and we'll say social activist, racial activist, Cida Bento. And the phrase refers to the mythical figure of Narcissus, famous for being in love with the representation of his own image. The term coined by Cida reveals the commitment of white people to maintaining the unjust racial structure so that they can continue to preserve and privilege themselves. So what I want to point out here is, Michael B. Jordan himself said that he was inspired. One of the inspirations for the film and the character he played, Killmonger, was inspired by Zé Pequeno, which is what somebody posted here. Killmonger was inspired by Zé Pequeno. Okay. But the question is, what has happened to the actor Leandro Firmino. Let me see if I can find that picture of him. Okay, so this is Leandro Firmino in a more recent picture. This is him portraying Zé Pequeno. So the differences between their careers, Michael B. Jordan is like an internationally known popular actor these days. He recently played, I think it was in Creed 3, and his star has exploded. Um, but when you look at Leandro Firmino, you have to ask, okay, what is this guy doing? He played one of the most iconic characters in the history of Brazilian cinema. So you would think his star would have risen too, but that's not exactly what has happened. Leandro Firmino has been acting sparingly over the years. He gets parts here and there, but he never became an A-list actor, in the Brazilian, just the audiovisual productions, right? He recently appeared in this television series on it's one of the branches of Fox, and it's in the miniseries, or it's in the series that's called Impuros. So it's translated as impure. And according to Wikipedia, it says based on real events set in the 1990s, Impuros follows the story of Evandro do Dendê, leader of one of the largest criminal factions in the periphery of Rio de Janeiro, and the policeman Morello, a self-destructive veteran who will seek vengeance at all costs. Two violent men, strategists, cold, respected by their followers, and sharing the love for war. So this is something that I talked about in a video probably a couple of months ago, Black Bandits, how Brazil's media continues to perpetuate the racist image of Black criminals. So these are just a couple of covers of some recent depictions of, you'll notice, dark-skinned Black men. They're leading, gang factions. They're involved in drug trafficking or whatever. And this is what you see. Actor Seu Jorge, who was also in City of God in the series Irmandade. This is actor Jonathan Azevedo. He appears as a drug dealer as Sabia in the soap opera Força do Querer. This is another actor from City of God, Douglas Silva, as the character Marconi in the television novella meaning soap opera, Amor de Mãe. So you see what he's into. You got a Black man with a weapon, right? Another still from the series Impuros. Here you have the actor we're talking about today, Leandro Firmino. Okay. This is a still from the Cidade dos Homens film, or this is from the series, but Cidade dos Homens or City of Men was a spin-off from City of God, Cidade dos Homens, or Cidade de Deus. Okay. Why is it that all of these series have to depict Black men, particularly Black men, in that way? They also have stereotypes on Black women. So what Leandro Firmino's wife was talking about is that, he's, with the role he played in City of God, you think his career would have blown up. Instead, she has to work, 40 or more hours a week for them to help the family household, get by. There was, some of you may have seen this, but some years ago, matter of fact, 2012, there was a documentary that came out that says it was called City of God 10 years later. And it just went behind the scenes and interviewed some of the actors of the City of God movie 10 years later and what happened to them. This is a picture from that. You see the guy, this is Leandro Firmino. See, he's not a very tall guy. I don't know. He might be about 5'2", 5'3", 5'4", somewhere in there. As you can see, standing against the other men in the series or in the film, he's of short stature. So this particular article just goes through some of the characters from the film and what they're doing today. Some of these people continue on in the acting world. Some of them went into theater. Some of them have disappeared altogether. I know that one particular, let me see where I can find this story. This is a piece I did in 2019. The protagonist of the blockbuster film City of God is now an Uber driver. And this exposes our most perverse racism. So the guy who played Buscapé, I forget how they, Little Rocket might have been, how they translated it in the English version. But he was one of the stars of the movie. But yet here it was a couple years later, he was driving an Uber. Now, from what I understand, he did get a part playing the same character in, I think there's a upcoming miniseries that picks up from the City of God movie and turn it into a miniseries. This actor, Rubens Sabino, he played the drug dealer Neguinho or Blackie. He became his story was a big topic in the news headlines because, he fell victim to a crack habit in Sao Paulo. Um, so what is it? What is the difference here? Brazil always wants to portray the fact that we don't, racism doesn't exist here. We see everybody as equal. But the person in the City of God movie who went on to an international career was the white girl who was pictured on the cover kissing the main character. If you remember, I forget her name. Is it Ana Braga? I think she is. I think the niece of one of Brazil's most well-known actresses, Sonia Braga. For those of you who don't know who Sonia Braga is, maybe you remember a particular one or two episodes of the Cosby Show in the '80s where she played Theo's, I think, math teacher, Miss Westlake. That was Sonia Braga, and her niece has been developing a career in the American film industry. So then the question here is again, why is it that somebody who plays such a prominent role in a film like City of God didn't go on to blow up? You know, I can say that I can ask that question for all of the actors in City of God. You know, now when I think about this, I have to be a little bit honest. I mean, whether somebody believes that structural racism is embedded in whether it's the American society or Brazilian society, that's up for debate. But we can't deny, I mean, even white people who are willing to admit the truth will say, like, look, I know because of the way I look, I have certain advantages over black people who might be more qualified than me. I've heard white Brazilians who have said that. Most will never admit that, but there occasionally are those white people who will admit that. And, obviously, Leandro Firmino being darker skinned, I'm quite sure that probably has a little something to do with it because Brazil has always had this thing of the closer to white you are, the easier your life might be. Now, that doesn't necessarily apply to all mixed or mulatto people because we see in terms of social economics, black and brown people and brown. When we say brown in Brazil, it could be a mixture of anything. There's a parcel of the brown population in Brazil that would be considered black anywhere else. So for most part, 20 some years of studying this, I see that black people and brown people in Brazil are basically in the same boat, social economically speaking. But one thing I do have to speak on, when I looked at the pictures of Leandro Firmino, okay, first of all, if you saw City of God, you can see it in almost any picture. Like I mentioned in this article right here, if you look at Leandro Firmino right here, let me try to freeze this. If you look at Leandro Firmino here in the green shirt, you see he's one of the shortest people in the cast of actors here. You see him standing here. I would, I obviously haven't met any of these guys, but none of these guys are probably, say 6 feet tall. But one thing I want to point out is that, Hollywood, we know the acting genre, particularly on television, is highly influenced by, a person's appearance. So Leandro Firmino, he's short. He might be somewhere between 5'2" and 5'4". And as you can see from in 20 years, 21 years since the City of God has passed on, he's become a little bit pudgy. If we want to look at a comparison between him and Michael B. Jordan is known for being in great shape. We saw him in Black Panther. We saw him in, Creed 3, in the Creed series. So here is one example when we can say, or if his wife is complaining and saying, hey, look, if he was a white man who had performed the Zé Pequeno character, clearly his career would be much bigger by now. And I can agree with that. That is true. But at the same time, I would ask, I'm like, I'm looking at the guys here, these guys are cut up, you can see. And I would just ask, like, Leandro Firmino, I would think he would want to get back in the gym, to get back in shape. Because let's be honest, darker skinned actors are probably going to have a hard time. He's going to always be getting these roles as a gangster or a thug or a bandit of some type. So his skin color, particularly in a market like Brazil, that is very anti-black in terms of phenotype, he already has that playing against him. Then he's short. And then also, let's just say he's out of shape. So it, I'm not saying he deserves to be pushed to the side. I heard he picked up a role in a feature film. I don't know if he's the star. I have to go in and look into that. But these are some of the things I will consider when we consider, okay, Michael B. Jordan on one side and Leandro Firmino on the other side, right? Anyway, that's my take on Barbara Carini's take on this whole thing. What is it? Killmonger. The Killmonger character was inspired by Zé Pequeno. So that's just a few of my thoughts on basically what she was saying. Is it true that Leandro Firmino should be a bigger star in Brazil? I would definitely say so. But as I've the attitude that I've taken also is that we always have to prepare ourselves to be the best that we can be before we can say, okay, this is only racism that's holding me back. Like, okay, we're never going to say that racism doesn't exist. But at the same time, if you're not at your best to be able to open the door when opportunity knocks, part of that blame is going to go on yourself. I can accept my own responsibility, in my own life also. So anyways, you know what? I forgot. Let me go into the comment section because I forgot to reveal the comments about what people said about this particular article. The first comment said Leandro Firmino simply gave one of the greatest performances in Brazilian cinema. Zé Pequeno is undoubtedly one of the most striking characters in Brazil's current cinematic history. If he were a white character, he'd be up in Hollywood. Simple as that. Okay, that's really what I was just hinting at. Two, man, your analysis is very true. I'm a business consultant. I've done magnificent things, achieving commercial and management results that companies would never do. But I often have to deal with broken contracts, the devaluation of what we produce, and the suspicion that I won't be able to do it all the time. And even with an okay company and an excellent tax return, getting financing is the hardest thing for the Black man. But giving up is not an option. Let's keep fighting with small victories to make the future world a little smoother for those who are going into battle. As Emicida, rapper Emicida, a very popular rapper in Brazil, as Emicida says, I'm not going back to the slums with empty hands. Peep what he said here. Getting financed is the hardest thing for the Black man. I did a story a couple of weeks ago where I was talking about this Angolan guy who's been living in Brazil for some time. He's an actor and director, and he went outside of Brazil to try to get funding for his streaming platform. So this is what he's saying. Getting funding is one of, for Black Brazilians who want to be entrepreneurs of some sort. This is the hardest thing, getting financing within the country. As I said in this example, this particular entrepreneur, he went outside of Brazil to secure funding from international sources. Number three, I'm also thinking of Babu, who has acted in award-winning films and had to go to Big Brother Brazil to make a decent living as an actor again. Now, what they're talking about is the actor Babu Santana. He's an award-winning Black actor in Brazil. He's got accolades and awards for all types of his performances in films, television. He played the role of Brazilian soul singer Tim Maia in a film. I think it came out in 2014, and he won accolades for that role. But then here it was years later. He appeared on the long-running reality show Big Brother Brazil, and he competed on that program. And people were asking a question like, "This guy has a great, resume of his acting skills, but in order to make ends meet, he has to compete on a reality show in hopes of winning the million reais that was the prize on the show." It just speaks to, the opportunities and what Black actors go through trying to make it in Brazil's film industry. Number four says the Brazilian film industry is blatantly racist. Number five, I saw a documentary about what happened to the actors who took part in the movie, man. It's sad. Not to mention the starvation wages while the box office made a lot of money. That has to change. A very important debate. Number six comment, a very important debate. Watch City of God 10 years later. It's a documentary on Netflix that shows how the actors and actresses are doing a decade after the movie was released. When I watched it, I was struck by how the actors' fame was crossed by the color of their skin. Our reality is very sad. So again, I talked about this earlier, the documentary on City of God 10 years later. You could just read what some of the comments were saying, in this documentary. Douglas Silva, the guy who played young Zé Pequeno, he was called Lil Dice at the time, Dadinho in Portuguese. And he said 10 years later, his life hadn't changed much. You know, I don't, he was talking about, I think he talked about his salary. I think it was Leandro Firmino, again, the guy who played the adult Zé Pequeno, just talking about there needs to be more opportunities for Black people. And then Cell Georgie said something. So Cell Georgie is one of the few people who's developed a really big career. You know, most people know him as an actor, but he started his career as a singer. But again, Cidade de Deus, one of the biggest films internationally to ever come out of Brazil, and you just didn't see many of the actors that come out of that movie go on to big successful careers, except for the white girl who's performing in American films. So anyway, I'm going to end the video here. I'm curious to know what you thought about today's article, today's video. Definitely drop a comment in the comment section. Share this video, like this video. Consider subscribing to the channel if you watch more than a few of the videos here. You know, smash that notification bell so you get my videos as soon as they go up. And with that said, I'm going to end this video here and ask you to come by and check out my next video.